I recall the moment my first life ended, not the final demise that would take me while serving the Emperor, but the passing of the boy I used to be. It happened when the heavens tore apart and a vessel of searing alloy plunged onto the lava-swept badlands of Nocturne. That's when they discovered me, a frail kid scarred by flames over most of my frame, gripping a hammer I'd crafted from discarded bits. That's when I evolved beyond mere mortality. Folks claim the initial passing comes without much struggle. I've perished countless times afterward, every comrade fallen, every soul I failed to rescue, every planet we abandoned to flames, minor losses, essential ones, the price we pay for what the Imperium labels as triumph. I'm Sergeant TK from the Salamanders' 3rd Company, and I've devoted 276 Terran years to the Emperor. I've traversed infernos that strip meat from skeletons. I've confronted abominations that break the sanity of ordinary folk. I've witnessed humanity's heights and depths, sometimes in a single instant within one individual. They've dubbed me champion, fiend, redeemer, and slayer. Reality, as ever, smolders in the gray area. The initial lesson from the Salamanders is that flames aren't solely for ruin. They cleanse, they shape. Frail alloy turns robust amid the blaze. Dross gets incinerated. What's left endures tougher, bounces back stronger, serves better. Yet don't fool yourself. Turning valuable demands brutality. My change ignited in the scorched chambers of Mount Deathfire. I was 12. Terran years old. On Nocturne, amid its brutal rhythm of ruin and renewal, such counts barely mattered. I'd endured my ordeal, retrieving a relic from the depths of a magma beast that forever menaced our outposts. My chest burned raw, my hide bubbled, yet I'd shown I merited a chance. The healers dismantled me, bit by bit. They swapped my breakable flesh parts for wonders of bio-crafted ingenuity. They remolded my bones, stretched my arms and legs, widened my torso to fit my upgraded form. They altered my very blueprint with the holy gene seed from Vulcan. I howled for days, then weeks, then months, until one dawn I noticed I'd lost the knack for howling. I'd erased the youth I'd been. Gazing into the gleam of a medical tool, I met crimson eyes gazing from ebony hide. I'd emerged anew from the blaze. Humanity was behind me. I was an Astartes. I was a salamander. The mortals we shield regard us with wonder, respect, terror. They can't grasp our forfeits to stand as their wardens. They behold just the splendor. They miss the toll. But I'm jumping forward. Any space marine's tale is one of conflict, perpetual strife, combat lacking aim save endurance, battles devoid of triumph's promise, clashes stripped of sense beyond what we etch from them via gun and sword. Yet for Vulcan's heirs, strife carries a deeper layer, a richer purpose. For our kin, victory in fight alone holds no shine. True honor rests solely in rescuing the defenseless. My debut mission hit 63 years back on a quarry planet named Corrigus II, a remote speck of scant tactical worth, yet harboring 8 billion loyal Imperials. The sort of outpost the Imperium recalls only for tribute deadlines or utter disasters. A disaster had struck hard. The comms cry hinted at uprising, but reality proved far grimmer, far uglier. Genestealers had wormed into the main dig site across 3 lineages prior. Upon our landing, the elite half of the globe's leaders showed faint signs of the Xenos taint. Fingers with extra bends, gazes mirroring like burnished rock, jaws stretching a touch too broad. I recall bracing in the descent capsule as it hurtled groundward, flanked by my squad mates. The old hands bore the weary look of those anticipating the inevitable. The novices, like me back then, clung to ideals of valor, bravery, deliverance. Captain Drouse, a fighter whose 300 years of duty mapped across his wounds, eyed me with near compassion. Quote Noni. He rasped, tone like rugged lava rock. Quote Monde 1. I dipped my head, brimming with resolve, swelling with honor. His warning's burden escaped me. Not then. We touched down in the chief quarry hub, a vast sprawl carved into an adamantium-laden peak. The avenue stood deserted. Quietude reigned total. 8 million dwellers filled that place, yet none stirred its paths. Where'd they go, Brother Agathon wondered, his rifle scanning the barren square of our arrival. A noise came the reply, a moist gliding noise. It felt like the assault erupted from every direction simultaneously, emerging from sewer covers, the shadowed openings of hab blocks, and the labyrinthine mining shafts that snaked beneath the metropolis like vital veins. "They're here," Captain Draus announced, activating his power sword. The azure energy blade whirred into existence, illuminating his stern countenance with an eerie glow. "They're surrounding us completely." The initial assault originated from the depths. Adamantium street grates exploded open as hordes of figures erupted from the underground conduits. These had formerly been people, workers in the mines, officials, even youngsters. Now they resembled grotesque distortions of their former selves. Their arms and legs stretched unnaturally, their heads deformed, their flesh pulled taut over swollen musculature, unfit for any human body. I recall lifting my bolter. I recall the initial shot I unleashed, tearing into the torso of what used to be a female figure. She still clung to the frayed remnants of an administrator's outfit from the mines. An identification badge dangled from her chest, right above the spot where my bolt detonated, ripping her body apart in a burst of tainted tissue. Her name was Livia. I convinced myself that she had perished long ago, that the individual she once was had vanished well before I squeezed the trigger. Yet in the nightmares that invade my scarce rests, her visage appears. All their visages appear. That opening clash dragged on for 18 hours without respite. Bolter blasts and flamer bursts transformed the constricted alleys into zones of slaughter. The afflicted advanced in relentless surges, leveraging their vast multitudes to attempt overpowering us. We incinerated them by the hundreds, by the thousands. The stench of promethium and charred remains hung so heavily in the atmosphere that it coated the tongue. My bolter rounds depleted after 6 hours. I resorted to my fighting blade and chains ward. The confrontation grew close quarters, intensely individual. I gazed directly into the eyes of every corrupted local as I granted them release. A few pleaded, others expressed gratitude. When darkness descended, the roadways flowed with polluted ichor. We had established a defensive line encircling the primary governance hub, yet the urban sprawl had fallen to the Gestalers and their warped progeny. Just 18 salamanders pitted against millions of the contaminated. Quote 6. Brother Hector suggested during our assembly in the ruins of a municipal assembly hall. Quote T said. Captain Draus refuted, shaking his head. Quote 18. Quote T9. Hector pressed on. Quote Tin Hindu Tenno. Quote Lavafi Nanan. Draus responded, and that sufficed as justification. That evening, we learned of holdouts, humans who had fortified themselves within the profound excavation passages, shielded by reinforced bulkheads meant to seal off collapses. Close to 2 million residents still pure, gripped by fear and dwindling in supplies of sustenance and oxygen. Quote 12. Draus explained to us as we clustered near the Vox receiver capturing their frantic signals. What's, quote 13. The following 8 days saw us carving a path toward those subterranean routes, block by block, structure by structure, each advance exacted in bloodshed, much of it foul, yet portions unmarred. We forfeited 2 additional brothers over that span, noble fighters, comrades I'd instructed, battled beside and bonded with in the hallowed fellowship of the Salamanders. Brother Kai's lingers sharpest in my thoughts. A year my junior in preparation, he was a reserved figure blessed with talent in fabrication. His modifications to power armor earned acclaim across the chapter. He perished defending a maintenance passage from an onslaught of Genistealers, allowing 300 families of miners to reach our rally site. Upon retrieving his remains, we discovered he'd collapsed in a stance that still obstructed the way. Right to his last breath, duty remained foremost. We successfully extracted 875 loyal imperial subjects from Carugus II. The remainder met purification when the Inquisition deployed with a war fleet and unleashed exterminatus strikes from above. The archival reports deem the mission victorious, a testament to the Imperium's unyielding strength. No formal chronicle acknowledges the 6 Bill 135 for 88 lives consumed in nuclear blaze. None honors the 5 salamanders who offered their existences for the sake of others. Such is the splendor proclaimed in Terra's grand basilicas. Such is the toll of endurance amid a cosmos defined solely by conflict. Yet, Corrigus III marked merely the onset. The subsequent eras melded into a haze after that inaugural purge, spanning decades of conflict, centuries of strife. The identities and countenances of the battlegrounds we defended merged like diluted pigments under storm. But certain ones endure vividly, searing too intensely to ever dim in recollection. Ho's Prime, an industrial stronghold of the Adeptus Mechanicus, succumbed to chaos's blight. We battled across fabrication plants vaster than metropolises, where the equipment itself, the structures had warped into grotesque mockeries of their former glory. Poisonous vapors hung heavy in the atmosphere, mingled with the agonized wails of tormented machine souls. Within the vast manufactorums, once dedicated to crafting armored vehicles and armaments for the Imperium's legions, the tainted adepts of the Mechanicus now performed profane ceremonies, fusing demonic entities to both circuitry and organic tissue. We purged it all through flames, ever through flames. The holy promethium from our flame projectors sanctified the irredeemable. Our campaign on that planet stretched across 3 grueling months, 3 months steeped in ceaseless atrocity. I witnessed a demonic engine devour Brother Terran, pulling him into its grinding jaws as his plate buckled like dry leaves. I exacted retribution. I destroyed the abomination using melta-explosives positioned precisely at the flawed unions between its machinery and demon. I heard its death howl echo out. There was no joy in the slaying, merely relief that it would harvest no further lives. We extracted 12 000 untainted tech priests from Hefus Prime. The others were judged beyond redemption. Inquisitorial archives record our success in safeguarding 37% of the Forge World's premier tech relics. They omit the toll. As always. Next came Valos 9, an agricultural planet bordering the Ultima Segmentum, a serene realm of undulating farmlands and unclouded heavens, the sort of place that evokes the very essence of what mankind strives to defend. This marked one of the rare missions where we intervened prior to the catastrophe's complete grip. Orcs had crash-landed on the southern landmass, a modest incursion, a fragment of a grander wah shattered in the stars by Navy void ships. Yet, for the agrarian folk and their kin, it felt like the end times. We descended straight into the primary outpost facing assault. I recall the amber harvests ablaze, dark plumes ascending to mar the flawless azure vault above. The crude blasts of orc shooters blended with civilian cries, the tang of spilled lifeblood and scorched yields drifting on breezes, meant solely for the aroma of burgeoning life. On this occasion, we landed soon enough to alter the course. The greenskins had barely overrun the outpost's basic barricades when our assault craft slammed into their flanks. We burst forth in blaze and wrath, bolt guns thundering, flame units dousing the terrain in purifying promethium. The orcs pivoted toward us, thrilled at the chance for true melee. Their warlord, a colossal brute towering a full 3 heads above any Astartes, unleashed a roar that trembled the earth underfoot. "For Vulcan and the Emperor!" Captain Drouse bellowed back, and we surged ahead. There's an unadulterated essence to battling orcs, seldom encountered in other war zones. They aren't twisted former humans we hesitate to eliminate. They aren't chaos thralls we pity amid extermination. They aren't the stealthy genestealers or the cryptic Eldari. Orcs exist for conflict. They crave nothing more. In a twisted sense, they represent the most straightforward foes we confront. The clash unfolded magnificently in the raw manner that soldiers sometimes describe it. Steel clashing steel, might versus might, resolve against resolve. No ethical quandaries, no soul-wrenching decisions, merely the stark arithmetic of battle. I confronted the warlord directly, flanked by Brother Piriel. The monstrosity loomed enormous, draped in makeshift plating scavenged from wrecked transports and felled flyers. Its power claw could rend ceramite like fabric. Its bellow drowned all sound, foam erupting from fangs vast enough to swallow a man's skull. Piriel lunged initially, his energy axe carving deeply into the orc's flank. Verdant ichor splashed over his plating. The fiend barely registered the blow. It lashed its claw in a savage sweep that Piriel couldn't fully evade. The strike raked his torso, shredding armor and meat alike. He collapsed, yet not before unleashing his sidearm into the brute's torso. The shells burst on impact, reeling the beast sufficiently for my assault. My chainsword snarled as I plunged it into the gash Piriel had carved. The titan roared in fury and torment. Its claw whipped out, snagging my helm and ripping it away, peeling flesh from my brow in the process. I sensed the warmth of blood trickling over my chilled ebony features. The warlord leered, deeming me exposed. It failed to grasp the nature of Vulcan's progeny. It failed to comprehend the inferno that tempers us. I pressed on, forsaking my embedded chainsword. I unsheathed my thunder knife, a basic tool, yet one I had hammered in Nocturne's lava flows. The edge shimmered with residual warmth, an alteration of my crafting. As the warlord grasped for me with its uninjured limb, I slipped within its reach and thrust the blade upward from below its maw. The incandescent steel sliced through sinew and skeleton with ease. It pierced onward into the creature's mind. The warlord's. His eyes bulged in surprise before fading as mortality claimed him. The beast collapsed like a toppled oak, almost pinning me under its enormous weight. The war boss's demise shattered the orc's drive. Leaderless, they splintered into scattered packs, simpler to pick off and eliminate one by one. As dusk settled, the outpost was ours. I located Brother Piriel under the apothecary's watch. His injuries were grave, yet survivable. He'd return to battle soon enough, glancing up at me, his complexion ashen from hemorrhage, but his gaze sharp and resolute. "Did we protect them?" he inquired. "Indeed, brother," I assured him. "The outpost endures. Its inhabitants survive." A faint smile crossed his lips then, an uncommon sight for a space marine. In that moment, the cost felt justified. We lingered on Velos 9 for 3 weeks, pursuing the lingering orc remnants and fortifying the outposts. No brothers fell during that effort. We rescued close to 3 million Imperial souls. By every standard, it counted as a triumph, swift, thorough, the sort of achievement that the Imperium storytellers spin into grand legends to rally the throngs. Still, the harsh truth of our lives seeped in even then. On our last day there, readying to leave, a small boy neared me while I guarded the main outpost's perimeter. He couldn't have been over 10 Terran years. His gaze stretched wide, absorbing my towering frame, my armor etched with combat scars, my otherworldly traits. "Quote 18, he whispered, voice laced with wonder. I peered down and glimpsed my former self, a delicate human youth, exposed and breakable, staring at the incomprehensible. "Quote 19, I responded. "Quote 20, he refused to accept it, shaking his head. "Quote 21, "Quote 22, I countered. It had quote 23. The child examined me intently for what felt like ages. "Quote 24, he ventured at last. "Quote 25, he waved a hand toward my entire being, at existing as I do. I might have deceived him, maybe I ought to have, yet his stare called for honesty. "Quote 26, I admitted. "Quote 27, he inclined his head gravely, as though verifying a long-held hunch. "Quote 28, he murmured. With that, he dashed away toward the outpost, his kin, his existence that persisted thanks to our required actions. I've pondered that boy's fate many times. Did he reach maturity and tranquility, or did the Imperium's insatiable demand for troops eventually seize him as it devours every asset of value? Did he recall the reality I shared, the daily torment? This is the splendor they murmur about in hushed reverence. This is the distinction of serving as one of the Emperor's elect. This is the toll we embrace without reservation, for no alternative calling defines us. Yet, the stars rarely grant triumphs as untainted as Velos 9. Far more typical is the grim spectacle of Kiros 3, a hive world within the Segmentum Tempestus, countless billions crammed atop each other in colossal towers that stabbed through the ceaseless fume-laden atmosphere. A planet churning out chemical armaments for the Imperial Guard, its plants spewing poisonous refuse that soured the precipitation and scorched the earth lifeless for 1,000 kilometers around. We arrived at Kiros 3 to quell a worldwide insurrection. The sanctioned accounts described labor uprisings escalating to bloodshed, endangering the planet's crucial output of toxin-based weapons. In reality, as we uncovered, the matter ran deeper. The planetary governor and his officials had deliberately exhausted the underhive masses to exhaustion. Safeguards in the toxin facilities were discarded to boost yields. Laborers faced deadly substances unprotected. Whole residential sectors got barricaded once pollution hit deadly thresholds, their dwellers abandoned to suffer in torment instead of costly care. The uprising ignited when mid-hive healers defied imperial edicts by aiding the poisoned workers. As the governor's troops moved to seize them, the populace surged to defend their protectors. It stemmed not from disloyalty to the Imperium, but from the basic urge to endure. Such nuances held no weight for the clerks who summoned us, though. Sedition remained sedition. Output must not waver. The Emperor's conflicts demand supply. We touched down at the governor's citadel, an opulent atrocity perched atop the tallest hive pinnacle, basking in pristine air, invisible to those below the haze. Governor Malthus met us personally, a bloated figure laden with gilded trinkets, his flesh unmarred and fair, free from the corrosive scars afflicting his laborers. Quote 29. He gasped, laboring through a clumsy obeisance before Captain Dracus. Quote 30. Dracus surveyed the man with the stoic, blood-red scrutiny typical of our order. He declared with straightforward resolve that we would bring back stability. The planetary leader grinned, exposing his enhanced dental implants of gold and platinum. Splendid, he remarked. I've assembled strategic maps of the areas under insurgent control. Perhaps you could start with intense aerial strikes on the laborer housing districts? Shatter their resolve at the outset, and the remainder will crumble swiftly. I studied Dracus's expression closely. Having shared 200 years as kin in the chapter, I could detect the faint indicators of his revulsion, subtleties that would escape any mortal gaze. We shall evaluate the circumstances on our own terms, Dracus stated firmly. The Salamanders avoid conflict with non-combatants whenever possible. The governor's grin wavered. These individuals aren't innocents, Captain. They're betrayers, insurgents. They've broken imperial edicts and halted essential munitions manufacturing. Even so, Dracus continued, his voice signaling the end of the exchange, our operations will follow our independent strategic judgments. That evening, as the governor threw a lavish banquet in our name, which we all boycotted, we dispatched scout squads into the depths of the hive. I commanded one of those units, navigating service conduits and refuse chutes to skirt the enemy fortifications. Our gear was lightened for stealth, with only essential arms to navigate the tight spaces of the sublevels. Our discoveries validated our initial doubts. The uprising consisted of everyday imperial subjects, pushed to the brink by outrageous mistreatment. Numerous showed signs of toxin poisoning, oozing lesions, labored breathing. Offspring suffered deformities unrelated to warp corruption, but tied directly to factory pollutants. The uprising's organizers weren't extremists or dissidents. They were foremen, health aides, repair crews, folks who'd concluded that mere existence justified resistance. I surveyed an impromptu clinic set up in a former recycling facility. Scores of sufferers rested on cobbled-together cots, tended by weary caregivers using jury-rigged tools. A figure among them appeared to direct the operation, petite, even for a baseline human, with a lean, sharp frame. Scars from acid marred her left cheek, contorting her visage into an enduring scowl. Still, she carried herself with understated poise, going from one invalid to the next, dispensing whatever solace was available. From concealment, I observed her for a full hour. I witnessed her clasp the fingers of a man in his final moments. I saw her soothe a young one whose airways, ravaged by fumes, turned every inhalation into torment. I noted her directing the rationing of their scant stockpiled resources. Back at base, I delivered my findings. Captain Dracus absorbed my account without interruption until I'd concluded. "What course do you propose, Brother TK?" he inquired. It struck me as a trial right then, as it does in retrospect, a gauge of my grasp on the salamander ethos. "We ought to parley," I proposed. "These folks aren't aiming to dismantle the Imperium. They're just clinging to life. Should the governor enforce suitable protective measures, supply proper health care, and offer clemency to the instigators, I'm confident they'd resume their duties without hesitation. Dracus inclined his head, a subtle curve at the corners of his mouth. And should he deny us? Then we must depose him, I added, the suggestion bordering on sedition, all in service to the Imperium's welfare. A barren planet yields no armaments. A labor force exhausted to oblivion can't instruct successors. The crisis on Kiros 3 isn't merely unethical, it's counterproductive. Dracus chuckled, a rarity for our brethren that drew glances from nearby warriors. Sound logic, Brother TK. You echo Vulcan's wisdom, the utmost benefit for the many, without overlooking any single soul's worth. His demeanor sobered once more. Regrettably, we hold no mandate to oust a system administrator, however warranted. Yet there might be an alternative path. Come dawn, Captain Dracus laid out terms to Governor Malthus. The Salamanders would quell the revolt, but under our conditions. We'd secure labor safeguards, healing for the afflicted, and pardons for everyone except the top agitators. In return, the populace would clock back in and output would restart. The governor flushed with rage. You're exceeding your remit, Captain. Your mission was to quash this uprising, not bargain with turncoats. Our directive was to re-establish control and restart output, Dracus countered evenly. This approach best fulfills those aims. I'll escalate this to your superiors, the governor fumed, to the chapter masters, the sector overseer, even the Inquisition. Feel free, Dracus responded. Meanwhile, we'll advance with our strategy, unless you'd prefer to retake the underlevels personally. The governor fell silent. His troops had already demonstrated their futility against the fierce stand of desperate souls, with nothing remaining to forfeit. He had little left to lose. Lacking the Salamander's support, he couldn't reclaim his authority. Fine, he snarled at last. Handle it as you see fit, Captain, but mark my words. I won't forget this. The Adeptus Astartes remains subject to the Emperor's law. Dracus inclined his head just a fraction, the motion laced with zero deference. We're banking on that, Governor. That very day, we reached out to the insurgent commanders. I joined the team that crossed into their domain under a banner of peace. Clad in complete power armor, yet with bolters secured, we projected power tempered by mercy. They hosted us in the same improvised clinic I'd spotted before. The lady scarred by corrosive acid stood foremost among them, her posture defiant, even as terror surely gripped her upon facing 5 Astartes in full war gear. Quote 34. My leader declared, his resonant tones booming through the vast chamber. Quote 35. The woman advanced. Quote 36. Quote 37, Dracus responded. Quote 38. He detailed the terms, protective changes, healing care, pardons, and a resumption of labor in decent circumstances. The rebels absorbed it all in astonished quiet. They'd braced for slaughter. They'd prepared for heroic sacrifice. Compassion from the Emperor's reapers of souls was the last thing they'd anticipated. Quote 39. Vasha inquired at length. Quote 40. Dracus set her straight. Quote 41. Quote 42. Another queried. Quote 43. I interjected, voicing my thoughts for the initial time. Quote 44. This choice hadn't come up in prior talks with Captain Dracus. It bordered on overreach to volunteer. Still, as I looked to my superior, his gaze held clear endorsement. Brother Sergeant TK voices my will, he affirmed. The Salamanders never forsake those in their charge. Vasha scrutinized us, her surviving eye squinted in doubt. And beyond our labor's revival, what do you demand? Nothing, Dracus stated plainly. She let out a bitter bark, empty of mirth. Pardon me, Captain, but in the Imperium, nobody acts without motive, least of all for our sort. We are Salamanders, I explained. We were mortal beings before. A few of us still grasp that truth. Within a week, the laborers reclaimed their stations. Output climbed back to 70% efficiency in mere days, surging to 90% over the next month as the wounded mended and rejoined the ranks. The improvements rolled out gradually, reluctantly, yet they took hold. I stayed on Kepharos III for 3 years, backed by shifting teams of fellow warriors. We set up a lasting outpost in Hive Secundus. Merely our vigilance compelled the governor to honor his pledges. It's striking how even the vilest bureaucrats rediscover ethics under a Space Marine's scrutiny. Vasha Kin evolved into a bridge between the toilers and the world's rulers. Her wounds stayed permanent, but her resolve endured unbroken. Monthly, she'd stop by our base to report on hive circumstances. Gradually, a tentative mutual regard grew. In my last stretch on Kepharos III, prior to linking up with my unit for fresh combat duties elsewhere, she presented me with a token. It was modest, a bronzed laborer's emblem awarded to survivors of 3 decades in the toxin facilities. Quote 52, she said, settling it into my enormous palm where it resembled a plaything. Quote 53, quote 54, I replied, attempting to hand it back. Quote 55. She insisted, curling my grip shut around it. Quote 56. The medallion remains with me. I carry it on a cord beneath my plate, hidden from view, known solely to myself. A token that true honor defies the Imperium's definitions. Honor lies in preservations, not destructions. Yet for each Kepharos Thahu, countless planets defy such tidy outcomes, places where rot festers beyond remedy, perils overwhelm, or deadlines expire. Delanos II comes to mind, where a warp tempest tore the barrier between worlds, drowning a whole landmass in unfiltered chaos essence. We battled over 6 weeks to rescue the maximum number of non-combatants possible, prior to the decay proving fatal. Ultimately, we managed to rescue fewer than 3% of the inhabitants. The remainder had to be incinerated using sacred promethium. Their agonized cries echoed behind us as we departed aboard the last gunships. It wasn't due to them being blasphemers worthy of demise, but rather to prevent the monstrosities they were destined to evolve into from endangering innumerable other planets. I often recall the demise of Captain Draus on the forge world of Helios Secundus. He perished while shielding a squad of Kitari isolated from their primary units by a Necron onslaught. The cybernetic warriors he sacrificed himself for scarcely noted his devotion, viewing it as nothing more than a logical strategic choice instead of the valiant deed it truly represented. His remains were retrieved, his gene seed extracted, yet the Adeptus Mechanicus archives contain no record of the Space Marine leader who laid down his life for their soldiers. I reflect on the rift at Aaron 5, where opposing imperial sects clashed over varying understandings of the Emperor's doctrine. Each group insisted they alone were his devoted followers. Each was prepared to slaughter and perish for their convictions. Our deployment there wasn't to arbitrate the doctrinal quarrel, but merely to halt the bloodshed, endangering the world's adamantium output. I commanded that operation personally, elevated to sergeant following Captain Dracus's passing. As my initial leadership role, I resolved to pay tribute to his legacy by seeking a resolution that spared as many lives as possible. I devoted weeks to discussions, aiming to bridge the divide between the feuding groups. Ultimately, my efforts proved futile. The animosity was too profound, the faith too unyielding. Once hostilities reignited, in spite of my interventions, we received directives to back the sect endorsed by the ecclesiarchy, irrespective of the validity of their beliefs. We slew thousands of individuals whose sole offense lay in their marginally divergent approach to honoring the identical emperor. The expression of High Deacon Salas, head of the group we were compelled to quash, remains etched in my memory. While escorting him to his end, he regarded me not with malice, but compassion. Quote 57. He murmured, his voice so soft only a Space Marine's enhanced senses could detect it. In your soul, you understand we are loyal devotees of the Emperor. What I comprehend holds no weight, I responded, only the duties I must fulfill. And that, my child, he continued, is precisely why the Imperium shall eventually crumble, not at the hands of foes from without, but from its core. When righteous souls carry out corrupt commands unquestioningly, darkness prevails. I carried out his sentence personally, granting as swift and merciful a passing as feasible. I convinced myself it was an act of kindness. I assured myself I was merely adhering to protocol. I repeated countless justifications during the shadowy vigils that ensued. None offered solace. This is the splendor they whisper about in reverent murmurs. This is the distinction of serving as a space marine. This is the weight we shoulder without utterance. Nevertheless, we persist. We continue the struggle. We strive to hold on to the mortal pulses thrumming within our augmented forms. Above all else, this defines what distinguishes the sons of Vulcan from our kin in rival chapters. We reject any erosion of our human essence, regardless of the toll. A toll exacted through anguish, uncertainty, through sleepless hours gazing into the void, second-guessing decisions rendered and existences extinguished. Other chapters evade such torment. The Ultramarines rely on their codex for direction, their assurance in routines and rites. The Space Wolves draw from their epic tales of fate, reveling in martial triumphs. The Imperial Fists cultivate endurance, distancing themselves emotionally from the atrocities they endure and enact. But we Salamanders bear every casualty, every shortfall, every concession like embers searing our cores. And akin to Nocturne's furnaces, those embers scar us even as they forge our resilience. For almost 4 decades, I have acted as sergeant. During that span, I've guided my fellow warriors through ordeals that would shatter the resolve of inferior fighters. I have rendered judgments that still torment my conscience. I have seen honorable souls perish under my directives. I have commanded the annihilation of millions when alternatives vanished. Yet I have also beheld instances of such deep compassion that they buoy me amid the gloom. On Tartarus Prime, during a savage war against Chaos adherents, I discovered a young girl concealed amid the debris of a former library. A child no older than 6, gripping a charred toy beast dusted in soot and foreign gore. She ought to have recoiled in fear from my towering, unnatural silhouette in charred armor. Yet she extended her arms toward me with unwavering faith, as though certain I had arrived to safeguard her. For 3 days, I bore her across contested battlefields, her frail body nestled in limbs built for demolition and slaughter. My squad adapted their strategies seamlessly, embracing heightened dangers to shield this lone, seemingly trivial existence. By the harsh arithmetic of conflict, we should have forsaken her. A single youth versus the campaign's vital aims, one soul versus the billions at stake. Everything would vanish if we slipped up. Yet we Salamanders don't dwell on those odds. We got her onto a refugee vessel heading for a secure sector. Her name escaped me entirely. She remained silent throughout those 3 days. Yet when I transferred her to the refugee overseer's charge, she slipped her plush toy right into my grasp. A parting token, an act of faith and thanks that outshines any battlefield triumph. I still hold on to it, that charred plaything next to the laborer's badge from Kiros 3. Modest tokens of our battle's purpose, of victory's real essence. Then there was Veritas 4, a medieval planet where Tech's decline had exposed its people to a savage outbreak. We arrived not as fighters, but as rescuers, guiding medical transports and aid convoys. My team roamed from outpost to outpost for months, setting up makeshift clinics, handing out cures, and cremating the fallen with honor instead of disdain. The inhabitants dubbed us the Dark Seraphs. They raised altars in our honor amid their rustic villages. They chanted praises to our compassion. This adoration unsettled my fellow warriors. Glory isn't our aim. Still, it marked the first mission in generations without claiming a single civilian soul. Every move aimed solely to shield, to sustain, to heal. As we left Veritas 4, the World Governor bestowed upon each of us a wooden amulet, etched with a symbolic blaze echoing both our order and the fresh optimism we'd ignited on a fading realm. Such keepsakes hold little worth for typical Astartes, but we Salamanders cherish these bonds with those under our guard, these solid proofs that our perpetual conflict serves more than just endurance. Yet for each Veritas 4 stands a Kais Turte, a realm so deeply tainted that redemption fails, only cleansing remains. Kais Turte served as a forge world, churning out sentinel walkers and various light transports for the Astra Militarum. Its smog-laden skies and sprawling industrial sprawls blended it seamlessly with countless similar hives across the Imperium. Kai's tears stood apart due to the insidious rot that festered within. Not the overt warp corruption marked by glaring deformities and heresies, nor the subtle Xenos spies with their giveaway traits for the vigilant eye. This was quieter, more primordial. The initial red flag surfaced when Sentinel deliveries to forward Astra Militarum units started showing up barren. Boxes meant for combat vehicles held only dust and twisted remnants. Probes uncovered that the units had ignited spontaneously en route, incinerating to ash in the void's chill. Once communications with Kai's Turtis grew fitful and then halted, we deployed to probe and, if required, reclaim it for the throne. We touched down, bracing for uprising or alien meddling. Instead, we encountered chaos beyond simple labels. The forges hummed on, laborers clocked in as usual, vehicles rolled off the lines. But nightly, the fresh sentinels and armored beasts lumbered to enormous craters gouged in the world's skin, descending into the molten depths to sate whatever lurked there. When we pressed the staff for answers, they droned about nourishing the void underneath. Their gazes were empty, their motions robotic. They betrayed no dread toward us, no feeling whatsoever. They pressed on with tasks in eerie uniformity. Scans piercing the planet's depths flagged bizarre signals. Beneath Kai's Tertius's surface slumbered an entity, timeless, immense, ravenous. The Adeptus Mechanicus ought to examine this, Brother Hector contended during our strategy huddle. It might represent an undiscovered alien breed, a major breakthrough in lore. Alert the Ordo Hereticus, Brother Muthus urged. This reeks of a demonic presence, maybe a slumbering god engine. I heard their arguments quietly, peering through the reinforced glass of our outpost at the humming plants, at the soulless toilers persisting in futile toil, at the newborn engines parading to annihilation in neat formations. We incinerate it, I declared at last, halting the talk. They stared, taken aback. Among our ranks, I held the rep for favoring options short of annihilation, for chasing routes that spared lives even if it hiked our dangers. I'd built that name across ages of duty, through endless wars where I'd pushed back against quick fixes for humane paths. Share your logic, Brother Sergeant, Hector replied, his voice courteous amid clear dissent. I gestured toward the plants, toward the laborers shuffled through their routines like mindless drones. They're already gone, I murmured softly. Whatever lurks beneath has seized their thoughts, if not their flesh, and it's gaining power with every mechanism it assimilates. That's precisely why we need to examine it, Hector insisted. If it dominates both people and technology, it poses a grave danger, one we have to comprehend to combat effectively. And how many additional victims will it claim during our analysis? I countered. How many vessels will come probing, only to succumb to its influence? How many Adeptus Mechanicus priests will fall to corruption in pursuit of forbidden insights? I shook my head. No. Certain forces aren't destined for comprehension, merely annihilation. Ultimately, they yielded to my authority, as protocol demanded. We withdrew to our strike cruiser and unleashed a methodical barrage across the planet's face, prioritizing the industrial forges, then the molten forges, and at last, any surviving settlements. As the assault raged on, our vessel's augers picked up stirrings under the world's shell. An immense presence was rousing. An age-old entity was awakening. Press the attack, I commanded. Direct every last lance and torpedo at these grid points. The ultimate barrage hammered the spots where our probes had flagged the most intense distortions. For an instant, stillness reigned. Then, fissures spiderwebbed across the crust. Rivers of lava erupted in colossal jets, plain to see from high orbit. A warp-born wail ripped into the psyches of all aboard, so fierce that even the unenhanced crew registered it as a far-off roar of fury and torment. Then, quiet descended. We observed Kai's Tertius for 3 weeks. The seismic upheavals gradually quieted, the warp signals faded away. The horror embedded in that world was either lulled back to slumber, or, far more probably, eradicated. The public dossier classified the purge as an exterminatus extreme, triggered by total factory breakdown and rampant societal chaos. The real account resides solely in our chapter's locked vaults and the recurring terrors of those who endured that last warp cry. This is the splendor they proclaim, blind to its true nature. This is the dignity of rendering choices no one ought to face, of shouldering loads that would shatter an ordinary mortal spirit. I have devoted 276 years to the Emperor's cause. I have beheld marvels and abominations too numerous to tally. I have rendered verdicts that rescued multitudes and damned equal numbers. I have witnessed comrades perish and aspirants ascend to fill their ranks. I have tempered blades in Nocturne's searing vents and tempered my own essence repeatedly in war's unrelenting trial. Amid it all, I strive to recall what distinguishes the Salamanders, what elevates us above the Emperor's other guardians. We recall, we empathize, we shoulder the gravity of every soul claimed and every life preserved. We do not revel in combat for its thrill alone, but for safeguarding mankind, whatever the toll on us. Nocturne holds an ancient myth, shared with youths as they mastered the smith's craft. It tells of a salamander among the mighty flame beasts of the eruptive wilds that deliberately plunged into the smithy blaze to rescue a human youth trapped inside. The creature coiled around the boy, drawing the inferno's fury into its impervious hide. The child emerged unscathed, but the salamander emerged altered by the ordeal. Its scales, formerly vivid and gleaming, turned to soot-black ash. Its gaze, once shadowed, blazed crimson with the fury it had claimed. The transformed beast could no longer rejoin its kin. It had shifted into something alien, a bridge between realms, neither pure animal nor any form acknowledged by the wilds. Yet it had preserved the youth, thereby discovering a calling greater than raw endurance. We mirror that salamander, reshaped by the blazes we choose to brave. Estranged from the humankind we sprang from. Neither wholly mortal nor utterly detached, marked by our offerings in our ebony hides and radiant crimson stares, barred from reclaiming our former selves. But we rescue the young, we shield the vulnerable, we defy the void that hungers to engulf all. And in that mission, we uncover significance in the evolution we've embraced. Is this splendor? I cannot say. I grasp only obligation, camaraderie, and the blaze that shapes us into what we are. Within the grand chamber of our bastion monastery on Nocturne stands a carving. It portrays Vulcan, our gene father, not amid strife, but bowed to raise a stricken youth from war's cinders. His colossal frame, forged from adamantium and onyx, envelops the tiny bronze form of the human babe in a shielding arc. His visage, akin yet distinct from ours, conveys deep tenderness. When fresh initiates join our ranks, prior to their ascension, they are led to gaze upon this monument. They hear the chronicle of Vulcan's mercy, his steadfast vow to defend humanity. They face one query. Are you prepared to blaze so that who among us could survive? Admission is granted solely to those who comprehend the essence of that inquiry. Only individuals who recognize that the salamander's splendor resides not in triumph, but in relinquishment, deserve to stand among us. More than 200 years past, I faced that carving as a terrified youth hailing from Nocturne's ashen wastes, uttering yes without grasping the commitment I made. Now I comprehend fully. I perceive both the honor and the weight of serving as Vulcan's heir. Ultimately, the flames devour us entirely. Yet what we safeguard from those infernos that forms our enduring inheritance, that constitutes the splendor worth pursuing, not the myths recited in the Imperium's indoctrination chambers, nor the accolades from remote overlords untouched by genuine warfare, but the existences that persist owing to our resolve to interpose ourselves between mankind and every peril seeking its ruin. I am Sergeant TK of the Salamanders, and in devotion to the Emperor, I have perished countless times. Every comrade fallen, every soul I failed to rescue, every planet abandoned to blaze behind us, minor losses, essential ones. Yet I have also endured myriad existences, every youngster pulled from war's debris, every realm shielded from encroaching shadows, every instance of mercy amid a cosmos steeped in brutality. Such is the contradiction at our core. Such is the reality beneath the renown they proclaim. Daily, we perish to grant mankind continuance. We smolder to bestow warmth untouched by devastation. We step into the blaze by choice, aware it will transform us, blemish us, etch us eternally as beings beyond mere humanity. and each time we would elect it anew. For we embody the Salamanders, Vulcan's progeny, hammered in flames, hardened through conflict, molded by empathy. And even as the stars rage about us, even as mankind's foes multiply without end, even as triumph's price ascends relentlessly, we shall advance into war's blazes toward the forge of strife. For the Emperor, for mankind, for the possibility that in some distant corner a youth may reach maturity untouched by the atrocities we have endured, that in some place our offering enables a span of serenity over perpetual strife. That, brother, defines true splendor.